The leading cabinet Brexiteer, Liam Fox, says MPs are trying to hijack Britain's withdrawal from the EU. Police say they believe a dissident Republican group, the New IRA, was behind a bombing in Londonderry. 4 men have been arrested. Also tonight, Donald Trump denies going soft on immigration and an official complaint from Labour about Diane Abbott's treatment on BBC Question Time. Theresa May is preparing to unveil her latest proposals for leaving the European Union after her plans were rejected by MPs last Tuesday. She's due to make a statement later today. The International Trade Secretary, Liam Fox, has accused some MPs of trying to hijack Brexit and steal the result from the British people. At least 2 cross-party groups of MPs plan to table amendments that would allow the House of Commons to wrest control of the Brexit process from the government. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Eardley.
With the clock ticking and little sign of an obvious solution to Westminster's Brexit impasse, some are worried about the UK leaving with no deal because time runs out. Others are suggesting that our departure day will have to be postponed beyond the 29th of March. And some MPs will use the next week to try and give the Commons more control over that decision and potentially mandate the government to seek an extension. That has infuriated Brexiteers, and this morning Liam Fox suggested some were trying to steal Brexit from the electorate.
Parliament has not got the right to hijack the Brexit process because Parliament said to the people of this country, we make a contract with you, you will make the decision and we will honour it. What we are now getting are some of those who were always absolutely opposed to the result of the referendum trying to hijack Brexit and in fact steal the result from the people.
Not so, say those working on plans to give MPs more of a say. The former Tory Attorney-General, Dominic Grieve, wants to engineer a situation where 300 MPs could decide to allocate parliamentary time to discussing a potential Brexit solution. If a majority then backed an idea in a vote, the government would have to try and implement it. That could be a negotiating objective, but it could also mean creating legislation allowing MPs to remove Brexit Day from statute. Mr Grieve said the Commons should have a proper voice in what he called the biggest crisis in our peacetime history.
We are in danger of crashing out of the EU with no deal. We think this is such a disaster for this country that something's going to have to be done to try to ensure that that's stopped.
Labour's Brexit spokesman, Sir Keir Starmer, believes postponing our departure now appears inevitable. He told the Andrew Marr Show the government has to allow compromise or face the consequences.
If the Prime Minister won't move her red lines, you can see what's going to happen, which is Parliament is going to try and take control of the process. That is because people are frustrated with the Prime Minister. This is only happening because of that. And I think in the next week or two, other options will now be tested one way or another.
The main sticking point, many Conservatives believe, is the Irish backstop question. Liam Fox suggested an alternative mechanism could be the way of persuading many Tories and the DUP to back the Prime Minister's Brexit blueprint. But with little sign of what that alternative is, a solution does not appear imminent. Mrs May will update the Commons on her next steps tomorrow, but many in Parliament are now hoping they will have a significant role in deciding what the next moves are.
There's been widespread condemnation of a bomb attack in Londonderry last night. A pizza delivery van was hijacked by 2 armed men. A device later exploded inside it close to a courthouse. No one was injured. A total of 4 men have now been arrested. Reporting from Derry, here's Emma Vardy.
The twisted wreckage of the vehicle remains in the centre of Londonderry today, and there is a sense of shock here. Attacks like this were believed to be a thing of the past. The police service of Northern Ireland linked it to the dissident Republican group known as the New IRA. Assistant Chief Constable Mark Hamilton described the attack as unbelievably reckless.
Last night in this area we had people socialising, we had people in the hotels, we had a bomb being moved through past people's homes, a highly unstable crude device that could have detonated at any time. A callous act, a deliberate act against the people of Derry.
Police say a pizza delivery van had been hijacked by 2 armed men in Derry a short time before the explosion. The New IRA is a proscribed group which aims to bring about a united Ireland. It's a breakaway organisation that formed in 2012, some 14 years after the end of the conflict in Northern Ireland known as the Troubles. The Sinn Féin president, Mary Lou MacDonald, had this message for those responsible.
It's a mindless and outrageous attack on the people of Derry. It's very troubling that this has happened. And to those who are responsible for that act, shame on you, and stop.
It's been several years since a device like this was detonated anywhere in Northern Ireland. Police can take some reassurance from the fact their evacuation procedures meant there were no injuries, but it reawakens memories of a darker time.
The boss of Sports Direct, Mike Ashley, is trying to buy the struggling music retailer HMV. Its administrators, KPMG, have refused to comment, but last week revealed that there'd been a number of offers for the firm. Our business correspondent Rob Young reports.
Mike Ashley owns a growing portfolio of big high street names. He set up Sports Direct, owns a large chunk of Debenhams and rescued House of Fraser from administration last August. Now the man some have dubbed the king of the high street is attempting to take charge of another well-known brand. He's tabled a bid to buy HMV, although it's unclear how much of the retailer he wants and at what price. The seller of music, games and videos went into administration at the end of December after what it called an extremely weak Christmas. The rise of online streaming services has hit sales of physical media.
A boat carrying 100 migrants to Europe is thought to be taking in water 60 miles off the coast of Libya. Activists monitoring the vessel say most of those on board are from West and North Africa. Despite requests for help, there's no sign of a rescue operation by the authorities in Libya, Italy or Malta. The president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has broken off a foreign tour to return home as criticism grows over the brutal crackdown of protesters in his country. Human rights groups say at least a dozen people have been killed. Our correspondent Andrew Harding reports from Johannesburg.
Zimbabwe's president had been planning to attend the Davos summit, a big stage for a leader seeking to reassure the world that his country is now open for business. Instead, Emmerson Mnangagwa is rushing home to deal with a major crisis. On Twitter, the president said his priority was to get Zimbabwe calm, stable and working again, after a week of violent protests and a brutal security clampdown that has prompted international condemnation. The government insists the protests are being stage-managed by terrorists in the opposition and has promised more tough action. But many Zimbabweans insist public anger about economic mismanagement and a sharp increase in the price of petrol has brought people onto the streets.
African Union leaders have postponed a visit to the Democratic Republic of Congo to discuss the disputed presidential election. The regional organisation had asked for the result to be delayed after allegations of electoral fraud. But the country's highest court declared Felix Tshisekedi the winner. His main rival, Martin Fayulu, has urged the international community not to recognise the outcome, saying he won by a wide margin. President Trump has said his offer to end a partial government shutdown does not amount to an amnesty for migrants who came to the country illegally. Last night, he offered a temporary reprieve to 700,000 young people who've become known as the Dreamers, but only if his political opponents agreed to funding for a wall along the border with Mexico. Some Republican commentators have accused Mr. Trump of going soft on immigration, as our Washington correspondent David Willis reports.
President Trump appeared to be responding to an accusation from the Conservative commentator Ann Coulter, who derided his offer of temporary relief for the Dreamers in a tweet shortly after the president made his announcement. Trump proposes amnesty. "We voted for Trump and got Jeb," she wrote, a reference to the more moderate Jeb Bush, whom Donald Trump defeated in the race for the Republican nomination. A previous claim by Ms. Coulter that the president was caving on a pledge to build a wall along America's southern border is thought to have played a key role in his decision to make funding for the wall a condition of ending the current government shutdown. And this morning, Mr. Trump tweeted, "Amnesty is not a part of my offer." Democrats, too, have dismissed the president's plan. This was Congressman Adam Schiff on CBS's Face the Nation.
What this is really about is not border security. What it's about is a broken promise that the president made, an oft-repeated, clearly false song and dance act that Mexico was going to build a great, big, beautiful wall and pay for it.
As this budget standoff enters a fifth week, the pain is starting to show. Thousands of government workers attended a food bank in Washington, D.C. Later this week, those same workers and many others will face a second payless payday.
The Labour Party has made a formal complaint to the BBC about the treatment of the Shadow Home Secretary Diane Abbott on last week's edition of Question Time. Ms Abbott has said she was interrupted more frequently than other guests and wrongly corrected by the presenter Fiona Bruce about Labour's standing in the opinion polls. More details from Richard Lister.
Diane Abbott's office says the Shadow Home Secretary was subjected to a hostile atmosphere during Thursday's Question Time, including being subjected to inappropriate remarks before the show began and then being interrupted more often than the other guests once it got underway. Labour hasn't commented formally on its complaint, but it's understood to have demanded an on-air correction to the assertion by Fiona Bruce that Labour was behind in the opinion polls. The BBC has acknowledged that Ms Abbott's comments about polling were correct, saying the programme should have made that clear, but it's denied treating her unfairly.
Sport, and Judd Trump has beaten Ronnie O'Sullivan by 10 frames to 4 to win his first snooker Masters title. It's O'Sullivan's biggest ever defeat in a Triple Crown event. There was a major upset at the Australian Open where the defending champion Roger Federer was beaten in the fourth round by the 20-year-old Greek player Stefanos Tsitsipas. Manchester City have closed the gap on the Premier League leaders Liverpool to 4 points with a 3-0 away win against Huddersfield, and Hearts are through to the fifth round of the Scottish Cup after a 1-0 win over Livingston. Now I'll look at the front pages of the morning's papers, and the Financial Times says Theresa May has refused to shift her position to secure a Brexit deal and will not lay out a substantive Plan B in her Commons statement today. The Times reports that she's halted the cross-party approach to Brexit and has told her cabinet that she will focus on securing changes from Brussels designed to win over rebel Conservatives and the DUP. According to The Telegraph, the Prime Minister is considering rewriting the Good Friday Agreement or negotiating a separate set of principles with Ireland, setting out how both sides would guarantee an open border after Brexit. The Mail's main story is that millions of women are putting their lives at risk because they're too embarrassed to be tested for cervical cancer. It says the cervical screening uptake in Britain is at an all-time low, with research suggesting issues of body consciousness are keeping women away. The Mirror reports that the Queen has sent a message of concern to one of the women injured when her car was involved in a collision with the Duke of Edinburgh's Land Rover near Sandringham last week. I'll look at the papers. The remains of 6 Jews murdered at Auschwitz have been laid to rest in Bushey in Hertfordshire. Hundreds of people attended, including survivors of the Holocaust. Our religion editor Martin Bashir watched the service.
We don't know who you are. We don't know your names. We don't know if you're male or female.
The Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis addressed a single casket containing human bone fragments from Auschwitz during an unprecedented funeral service at a Jewish cemetery in Hertfordshire. The material was among a number of Holocaust-related items donated to the Imperial War Museum in 1997, but only subjected to scientific testing last month. Expert analysis revealed human remains from at least 5 adults and a child. The Chief Rabbi said today's service was to grant these unknown individuals the dignity denied to them in life and should also act as a warning for future generations.
We need a strong reminder such as this to let us know what can result, even within a democratic society, even amongst a seemingly civilized society, if anti-Semitism, if racism, if xenophobia go unchecked.
As the coffin was lowered into the ground, the Chief Rabbi, quoting the prophet Isaiah, said that these unknown victims would now have an everlasting name in the presence of God himself.
In a few hours' time, sky gazers will be treated to a lunar eclipse. During the event, the moon will appear brighter, closer to the Earth than normal, and a striking shade of red. The best time to see it in the UK is expected to be around 5 a.m. Lucy Green, a professor of physics at University College London, says it will be a special experience.
They're not that rare, but you have to be in the right place at the right time to see them. And so for the UK, we won't have another total eclipse of this kind until December 2029. So it's rare and it's special, and we won't get something like this for another 10 years.
The headlines again. The leading cabinet Brexiteer Liam Fox says MPs are trying to hijack Britain's withdrawal from the EU. Police say they believe a dissident Republican group, the New IRA, was behind a bombing in Londonderry. The head of Sports Direct, Mike Ashley, is discussing a possible takeover of HMV. BBC News.